Hi there, Rick Ragosa here, in another episode of Mastering the Guitar. In this series, what I'm attempting to do is explain and give you a chance as being a learner of whatever level you're at, of what's involved on the inside of playing. The types of approaches that you want to have with your right hand and left hand, eliminating the barriers that a lot of players run into. I've come across in the last 18 or 19 years of teaching and being involved with instruction of guitar, a lot of players who have picked up certain playing abilities and they get to certain levels and it leads to just dead ends. And it's surprising how a lot of players have been playing for a long time, but they never stop to think of actually what they're doing. They never stop to think about, well, what are my fingers doing and what are the relationships between the two hands? So in this series, we'll focus a lot on, and in my approach to this process of thinking involved with playing the guitar, we're looking at exactly how the hands relate to the fretboard and the strings, and what, being a player, what you should actually be thinking about while you're playing. What I'd like to start with today, and we're developing a series, an ABC type of sequence here. So what we've started off with is basic exercises and just basic approaches, and what I like to do and what's the most beneficial to you is explain how you can expound on those and what's a way of developing the techniques that you want. The thing to keep in mind is you are at the wheel, so to speak, and you choose, what exactly the level of development you want. If you're an aspiring young player to be a professional guitar player, certain things you're going to have to take more seriously than if somebody just wants to be a casual weekend player. But on either side of the coin, it's important that you adhere to certain principles involved with playing. With this approach and process of thinking, basically you can acquire the skills and set out to achieve your goals as opposed to sitting in a room and hoping after 20 years it just happens. So it's important that you have a plan and some type of pattern, or what I call process of thinking, as an approach to learning the instrument. So every lesson is going to involve a little bit of recapping of what we've looked at and where it's leading, and then how we can add more and get to where we're going. Some of the breakdowns of the first couple of lessons has been just basic posture and an exercise I call basic exercise number 1, which consists of the 4 fingers of the left hand corresponding to any of the 4 frets on the guitar. Now, a position playing means that whatever number fret that your index finger's in line with, that's the position you're in. And that's the area that you'll be learning what the next drills are, or scales, or whatever it might be. And it's pretty much a standard information among players. Position playing, just helpful guides to breaking it down, as opposed to always going, okay, go to this fret number, go to this fret number. Just go to the 7th position, and then you're in the 7th position, so you know which fret your 4th finger's on, 3rd, 2nd, and 1st. And it just helps us to catalog what's going on in our learning development. It is important to note that I consider 2 phases to the playing mechanisms. There's a learning phase, meaning that there's time when you're exploring, you're developing, you're experimenting. And so you have to understand, or it's important to understand, from my viewpoints, that you pay particular attention to posture, how the finger approaches the strings, the amount of tension that's used in pressing the strings, because I've been playing a long time, professionally and on an amateur level, recording the works. It's been a long time. It's been a long haul for me. And the thing that to understand is when you're in play mode, you got a room full of people and they're asking you to play something, well, the learning, it's over with. What your fingers do will be determined on how you practice, your positive practice habits, as well as even just what you practice. So if you want to, be perhaps the center of attention one time, you've got a guitar, and you don't want people to sit there and look at you and play a couple licks and say, oh, that's very nice, turn the stereo back on, then it's important to understand that, you can determine, you might take half an hour as opposed to 5 minutes. If, by you and your practice time, pay a little bit more attention to your posture, how your fingers apply pressure to the fretboard, and even in regards to just what notes you play. So we've started with a basic exercise number 1, and I'm going to recap that right now, and then we're going to expound on that just a bit, because The idea of these things are to be guides or pathways to develop technique. You know, this whole mastering the guitar, there's practical means of acquiring the skills that we're looking for. The first part of any type of application on this instrument is making sure that you feel comfortable with it, that both hands have freedom of access to the strings and the playing areas, and the right hand, whether you're dealing with plectrum with the pick, or fingers, or the left hand dealing with either group chord notes or single string. One note at a time. Okay? So it's important that using these as guidelines over the years, if you cannot play a basic exercise, it's a very good chance that you're really not at a level that is comfortable with playing with someone else, because what it tends to do is just lead to frustration. You are expecting your hands to do certain things and they're just not doing it. And you can acquire the skills, but it's important that you take the time to do that in your private time and in your practice time. Now, going back to the basic exercise number 1, we're dealing with always applying proper posture, using the left hand as a type of pinching the thumb and the tip of each finger, okay? And it's important because that's the motion that's reproduced on the instrument just with a neck in between, okay? Now, I play on a scalloped fretboard, and in later episodes I'll show you a little bit more and explain a little bit more what that means. But for now, what that is that the wood in between these frets here has been routed out. So there is actually a space in between the string and the neck. So this, when I'm touching the string, I don't feel any of the fretboard behind me. What it allows me to do is that what I can, in fact, it's happened a number of times where I've been playing live and the strings went out of tune a little bit. Well, I can just apply a little extra pressure in that area and it will bring the string up to tune because there's no wood behind it. What happens with a normal guitar, conventional fretboards, is that because it's flat, the student presses, but it doesn't change the pitch, and so you really don't get a proper or a consistent register reading. Your articulate memory can't get exactly a reading on how many neurons that are involved with the amount of pressure, okay? And it's important to understand this, and this is the whole focus of learning how to play the guitar, because I can, on a normal fretboard, I can just press as hard as I can and strike, and that's the same note. On a scallop fretboard, there's a certain point where I can take that note out of pitch. And so the left hand and your body under the learning environment responds much faster and quicker into exactly how much pressure to apply. And that is the whole key. In the process of thinking that I'm conveying through these episodes, this is what you should be focusing on as you're sitting at home exploring and experimenting. You've got a guitar. What can I do with this thing? Well, the first thing that you should start doing is just getting used to what it takes to press the string down. Now, there is the capacity that certain guitars need to be set up. Constantly, and especially I've noticed in this climate, my instruments are constantly a little bit under excessive pressure with the moisture and the temperature changes. And so it's important that the strings aren't too high off the neck, and that the neck is, in some degree, there's a little bow in it, but it should be relatively straight. This way the height of the string isn't too crazy. I've seen some that are just insane, and they're just literally too hard to press. That's something that you should have looked at by somebody who can deal with that, because it's important that your guitar, it's referred to as action, be set up so that you can have the most comfortable playing, okay? Now, looking at this basic exercise, you want to have relaxed shoulders, you relax your arms, place your hand basically in a comfortable position. The base of the fingers here, okay, there's really no need for them to touch the neck. So if you're grabbing the neck like this, I don't recommend that because it's restricting, okay? From here, it's just limiting my access to the fretboard and being able to play chords and melody lines. Now, bringing the thumb down allows a natural curve for the fingers, and then they act like little hammers. And there's total freedom of movement and less things to restrict what you're doing, basically referred to as action again. So, having a quick recap over the basic exercise, it's 4 fingers on any one given string, okay? And what you're doing here and it's very important to warm up. I've been playing for 20-some years, and it's been a long time. And these drills have been a constant part of my playing. It's important that your fingers always, you see, the thing about what your articulate memory is, by being consistent in your practice sessions, this means that your body's picking up these patterns, and then, in fact, it takes approximately 6 weeks before any kind of mechanical function or repetition becomes a part of your articulate memory. So if you just kind of relax, don't rush, walk your body through this, your body will let you know when it's time to advance. Your fingers, when it's time for them to go faster, they'll let you know. You don't have to force it. And it's important, though, because the more you focus on proper posture and proper positioning, the sooner your body will remember that, because, let's face it, your hands don't know. So by telling them to adhere to certain principles, this allows your body to just adapt to those things, and before you know it, it's simple, and I brought this up before, that you don't have to remind yourself to walk once you've learned. So this is the same thing and same principles that are applied to learning the guitar. By adhering to basic posture and principles on minimum movement, okay, trying to be accurate as possible with the tips of the fingers and where they're placed behind the frets, by just concentrating those in the first stages of your playing, you very rarely will have to go back and relearn. If you can learn properly from the first stages, that just sets you off for a little bit more rapid development and much less frustration. So, in recapping this basic exercise, we start in any given position. Basically, your sets should encompass the whole area of the neck, but for now, we're in the 5th position. Okay, so count out to the 5th fret and place your index finger there. From here, we're going to include the right hand. The right hand, at this time, we're going to look at plectrum, which is what they refer to as using a pick. The pick and the strokes that you'll be dealing with are down and up. Down and up, okay? And we're going to look a little bit more with the right hand in this episode, but first let's just look at the basic warm-up exercise. So from here, what I want to do is get myself set up, apply pressure, strike the string, tension, and release so the sound stops. Now, you see that in what's on the film. Unless you're watching, there's very minimal movement there. And see what you're doing and give it a try, or who've been playing for a while, and intermediate levels, and in fact, whatever level you're at, watch how much energy that you're using. If you're making all these wasted motions, it's excessive, and it is exactly that, just a waste. And it really doesn't get you anywhere by doing those things. So to minimize your waste of motion maximizes your efficiency, okay? It's the laws of reciprocals. It just works that way. So I encourage that because, trust me, you'll need the energy for other things. So from here, I apply tension, strike, release. I leave the finger on as a guide finger, the second one. Tension, strike, release. Third finger. Tension, strike, release. Same with the fourth. Tension, strike, release. Okay? Now we go to the next string. Tension, strike, release. Tension, strike, release. You get yourself set up. Tension, strike, release. So the string stops. And you'll notice with the right hand, for now, as I'm walking up one step at a time, I'm using a downstroke. Okay? The idea of this series is to train the hands to do what they're supposed to, and to do what they'll be doing for pretty much the rest of your playing career, because this is where the action's at. How you hold a pick and how you strike the strings is exactly the key to playing. That's what's going on. You're doing something with the right hand, you're doing something with the left hand, and out of it all, certain riffs come out, and that's all about music, okay? Now, with this basic exercise, it's really a fundamental guideline or schematic, and it's designed and has been used for not only actual artistic expression, meaning that there's chromatic scales that use half-step intervals, which we'll get into explaining all the half steps. I haven't dealt with tuning yet, because at this stage of the game, it really doesn't matter what tuning your guitar is. If you've just picked it out of the closet and it's just sitting there and you want to do something with it, this series will help you, because once you get a little bit more familiar with your fretboard, the area they're playing, the action on your guitar, once you get a little bit more familiar with that, we'll fine tune on what tuning's all about and setting it up, and then you'll be a little bit more prepared to play your basic chords or riffs. There's plenty of time for that. Okay. Now, what the focus is on this episode is to expound on the basic exercise. So with this 4-finger area, once you may say, okay, well that's pretty boring. I can do that already. 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, try then with that to use down and up strokes, alternating with the right hand. And I'm showing you basic guidelines. In my practice sessions, and I've been playing a long time, I will take time sometimes and I'll go really, really slow. In fact, what I found, the slower I go, the more comfortable I feel, and after 5 or 10 minute warm-up, then my fingers they just feel they're pumped up with blood, they're ready to go, and then I'm ready to play. So now, looking at this basic drill, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, okay? So let's be kind of creative or imaginative and start applying certain sequences or sets with this. And what we can do is, for example, okay, and let's try this. Remember this as you're going through this. Do 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4. Because when you're playing basic riffs, whatever it might be, it's a combination of certain sequences and certain fingers, notes, and strings in certain areas. So let's start getting the body used to that type of relationship with the instrument. You're going to be doing sets of combinations. There's a lot of math based in the whole premise of how the strings are tuned, and even to the kind of notes you play, whatever it might be. Okay? Everything's based on meter, rhythm, okay, dealing with cycles. So it's important that in our learning we're comfortable with that and we know what we're doing and why we're doing this. So we've got a 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4. Then go to the next string. 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4. Okay? So work a little bit with that. You can go backwards. 4, 3, 2, 3, 2, 1. 4, 3, 2, 3, 2, 1. Okay? Now, what I want to look at just for a couple of minutes before we get into our closing finger exercises is techniques with the right hand based on the basic exercise. We can refer to as alternate picking when you're using down strokes and up strokes, okay? When you're going through these drills, try on any given string, just up strokes. And I'm just doing the same tension and release application. I'm getting ready, I'm clearing the area for play. You don't want to restrict yourself and you want to be as natural as possible. So up strokes. The next string. Okay? Or down strokes. Or alternating. Down and up. Okay? And that's very important that you take the right hand and focus purely on what's going on, okay? Natural motion, how the pick is held, how it attacks the string, and then getting used to what it feels like for a downstroke, getting used to what it feels like for an upstroke. There's not a lot of area in this, in the perimeters of the strings and the frets, and so it's important that you just keep it relaxed and just cover, a lot of times, just for warm-ups, I'll cover the strings and get that tonk sound I was talking about earlier. And just warm up. Get the hand warmed up, get it ready for the playing action, for the area. Now, if you're at this level or advanced, and we'll try to cover all the bases here, this is recommended advice and certain, it's not going to hurt you, okay? It's certain things that you should consider being a player. You can go so far even to start doing sets with the right hand, where you've got 1, 2, 3. Okay, you can do the 6th, 5th, and 4th string, and then go back to the 5th and go 1, 2, 3, or 6, 5, 4, 5, 4, 3, right? 4, 3, 2, and do sets of 3. All right? In fact, for the speed medalists out there, they refer to that as raking. Okay? But just getting that controlled area, and whether it's 3 or 4 sets of strings, if you're watching my hands, that's all the area that you need to be covering. There's no need to be doing wide, extended motions. Man, some guys I've had to do work on their guitars and they've got scars up here and scars down here, and I'm wondering, why do you need to do this? Like, you're hurting your instrument. Why are you beating it like this? It's not necessary. I can get as much dynamics just within this range as possible, and there's no need for major overemphasizing the motions, okay? So today what I've just tried to expound on is getting a little bit more complexity now with the basic drill, starting to do sets. And take my word for it, okay, I'm going to insist on this, that if you can't do a basic drill, 1, 2, 3, 4 type of thing, and starting to work with patterns, it's going to be very unlikely that you'll be able to accomplish even just basic music, because basic music is just that, even like rock chords type of. Okay, it's disciplined sets, it's deliberate motion to get those types of sounds, okay? So take my advice seriously, and when you're practicing, practice 5-10 minutes at a time and do just basic applications. Simplify the motion, tension and release, strike, relax. By focusing on that, you'll find your body will tell you and let you know if it's comfortable with going faster, slower, whatever's going on. And in fact, the thing is to understand that this is the development stage, so you're developing dexterity here. So it's important to move the fingers. You know, concentrate on moving the fingers, because if you don't, they're going to do their own thing, and it not necessarily is in your best interest. For the last few minutes here, what I'd like to do is get back to the finger exercises and again expound on the basic exercises. I've introduced the principles of just independent motion, trying to move each of the fingers on their own, and now we're going to get a little bit more intense into that. What I'd like you to try to do, and for those of you who have met me before, you've most likely been through this before, I want you to hold your hands out and, for now, bend the first finger in the middle phalange, okay? Just bend it and keep it in. Now what we want to do here is, as we straighten the first finger, try bending the second, third, and fourth in, okay? You can see that a little better there, okay? And it's important that, again, we're dealing with disciplined meters, so don't just be sporadic and mindless and, you know, kind of scattershot. Say, I'm going to do this 4 times, and do it 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, okay? Then bend the second finger in. And it's important to try to be disciplined to some degree, because we're instilling motion into our system. It doesn't know what's right or wrong, so certain times we want certain patterns and response to be the way it is. There's no exceptions to this. This is how you bend your fingers, so you should concentrate on that. Feel in your arms which muscle strands you're using, how the finger feels in your arms and your shoulders, because those are the muscles you need. The sooner you develop them in a relationship with them and get that coordination down, the sooner you can get on to just actually playing this thing. Okay? If you can't do these basic drills, then the chances of you advancing on this thing are next to slim, because this is the motion involved with either picking with the right hand or applying the tension on the left hand. So it's very important. You got a couple of minutes. For those young people going back to school, you got a couple of minutes at recess. Practice some finger exercises. Share them with your friends. Make it a competition. It's important to get this dexterity, and I only wish they would teach this in schools, and there'd be, you know, slightly more coordinated people walking around, as well as anybody into computer programming or typing, or even specialists who are surgeons and have to go through a regimented training to get this dexterity. So going back to the second finger, then as you straighten the second finger out, bend 1, 3, and 4 in, okay? And we'll do this in sets of 4, okay? Now the third finger, you bend it in. As you straighten the third finger, bend 1, 2, and 4, okay? And you just go slow, and the idea is to develop independent motion but also coordination, all right? And the fourth finger, as you bend the fourth finger, straighten 1, 2, and 3 out. Okay? You should eventually get to a dexterous level where you can do 20 of these. Okay? And just try 10 to start, 5 or 10, depending on how long you've been playing and what your strength in the forearms. And you'll be quite surprised how fast your forearms get fatigued. It's a very important drill, and it's really a fundamental foundation playing type of exercise. Is not only efficient for learning how to play the guitar, but piano or whatever you might apply your fingers to. Okay? So here's some recommended advice on certain principles on how to advance on playing the guitar, and really what you should be concentrating on. By concentrating on better coordination with your hands and how to apply the fingers, this becomes much less of a frustration when you apply them to the neck, and from there we're just eliminating the barriers from when we get to a point where you actually want to play things and create certain sounds. Which is musical. All right? I hope you enjoy yourself. Eventually we're going to be opening up the contact point where you can write to Community 10 and give us your feedback and ask questions. There will be some paperwork coming up in the episodes to follow that will be accessible through Community 10. So stay tuned, and I hope you enjoy yourself. And remember that it isn't something to be frustrated. You should just relax, follow along, and before you know it, there's going to be a picker in every house. All right? We'll see you next time on Mastering the Guitar.